A warm welcome to everyone to the anesthesia class sessions. The topic that we are going to deal today is intravenous induction agent. See, when we talk about the intravenous induction agents, they are very important topic because a lot of questions has been asked in the previous years from this topic. But the beauty of this topic is that it is not only interesting, but the questions that have been asked are quite straightforward and one-liner questions. But yes, mind it, the pattern has changed a bit and now more case-based scenarios are being coming. When we talk about the case-based scenarios, let me give you one example before we start this class. For example, a 21-year-old male met with a road traffic accident and was found lying unconscious. He was taken to the casualty. A CT scan was done. The CT showed a subdural hematoma with the midline shift, and the patient was posted for emergency decompressive craniotomy. Now, what will be the induction agent of choice for this case? See, it's a straight line, one line question. What is the induction agent of choice in this case? This case means a neurosurgical case. So you just have to tell the drug of choice in a neurosurgical case. So whenever such a case comes, you have to just take out that keyword from that case, that what kind of case is it. I am telling you this before starting the class even, so that as the class goes, you have to widen your horizon of thinking that yes, if this drug is safe to be used in renal failure patients, so such kind of cases or such kind of cooked up case can come, like which will tell you that the patient is having renal failure and now that patient is being posted for renal transplant surgery. So what will be the induction agent of choice for such a case? Okay, so let's start with the intravenous induction agents. When we talk about the induction agents, they are those agents which help in rapid loss of consciousness. Generally, the time taken for this is just 1 arm brain circulation time. The time is from the drug being injected into the vein till that drug reaches your brain, which is the site of action for all the induction agents. Generally, this time is 11 to 15 seconds. This is the time for your 1 arm brain circulation time. Ideal intravenous anesthetic agent. See, when we talk about something ideal, ideal means everything has to be the perfect. It should be a hypnotic, it should be a good sedative, it should give you amnesia, it should be non-irritable, it should be cheap, it should have a long shelf life. And talking about the pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics, it should have a rapid onset, the redistribution has to be perfect, rapid clearance, rapid metabolism, and no active metabolites should be left over. Similarly, pharmacodynamics, it should have a high therapeutic profile, a high therapeutic ratio, and cardiovascular and respiratory stability should be there. It should not affect the renal and your liver profile, and it should not be allergic to the body. It should have no hangover effects, no abuse potential should be there. And lastly, it should be safe to be used in each and every cases. For example, malignant hyperthermias, porphyrias, where some of the induction agents are contraindicated, but an ideal intravenous induction agent should be able to work in each and every case scenario, keeping the stability of the patient. Such an ideal anesthetic agent has still not been found. Now, coming to the very first intravenous induction agent, that is the propofol. See, we are going to tell you about 4 main drugs: propofol, thiopentone, ketamine, and etomidate. These drugs will be discussed under the headings of what chemical structure they are made up of, the pharmacokinetics, the pharmacodynamics, followed by the uses and the complications of the drug. Coming to propofol, see, the chemical structure of propofol is it is a alkyl phenol derivative. It is an alkyl phenol derivative 2,6-diisopropyl phenol. It is 2,6-diisopropyl phenol. It is white in color. This is the picture of propofol for reference purpose. It is a lipid emulsion. Please remember, propofol is a lipid emulsion, generally present in 1% concentration at a pH of 7. This propofol is constituted of soya bean 10%, glycerol 2.25%, and lastly egg lecithin, which is 1.2%. See, when we talk about soya bean, the important part that you all have to know is that when you inject propofol, it is very painful. And the reason why it is painful is because of the presence of soya bean. Soya bean is responsible for the pain on injection of propofol because these are large chain triglycerides which lead to pain. And how does it cause pain? What actually happens is that when these large chain triglycerides go into the vein, they are going to irritate the intimal layer of the vein. This intimal layer is then going to activate your kallikrein pathway, that are your bradykinins. And your bradykinins are responsible for the pain that is caused. Is there a way that you can decrease the pain? Yes, there are a lot of ways in which the pain can be decreased. Let's discuss how to decrease the pain. The very first is, you all must have heard about a local anesthetic, that is the lignocaine. So 1% lignocaine, around 2 ml, can be used to decrease the pain of propofol by giving it around 90 seconds before giving propofol via a method which is known as mini Byers block. By mini Byers block, I mean that you have to occlude your vein when you give the lignocaine and let that lignocaine reside in the vein for some time. It should not go in the system. And after 90 seconds, you can give propofol. Already some local anesthetic action has been come. Then second, you can give the propofol along with the flow of your fluid that you are giving. And lastly, you can choose a very thick vein for introduction of propofol, that your cannula should be in a thick vein. And then there are various other drugs like fentanyl, magnesium sulfate, dextromethorphan, and Himaxil, which have been used before the propofol in order to reduce the pain, out of which fentanyl is the most popular one. And last, we have egg lecithin and glycerol in it. The egg lecithin is the emulsifier in the propofol. The egg lecithin is the emulsifier. And glycerol is actually responsible for the transport of the propofol, which is a lipid emulsion, into the blood. If you see carefully, we have one constituent, that is the egg lecithin. This egg lecithin or the egg phosphatide is actually responsible for the bacterial contamination of propofol. Always remember that one induction agent in which bacterial contamination of Staphylococcus is very common is propofol because of the presence of egg lecithin. And in order to avoid this bacterial contamination, what we add is, we add certain preservatives like sodium metabisulfite. This is the preservative, sodium metabisulfite, which was used initially. But because of the bronchoconstrictive action of sodium metabisulfite, the latest preservative that is added to propofol is disodium EDTA. This is the preservative added to sodium in order to avoid the bacterial contamination. Always remember, if one vial of propofol is open, it has to be discarded after 6 hours. After 6 hours, that vial has to be discarded. See, I already told you about the pain on injection. There are various newer formulations of propofol that is coming over in order to decrease that pain of injection. out of which the very famous one is your false propofol. And false propofol has been asked in previous years also. This is your false propofol. And generally how this is asked is that what is true about false propofol. False propofol is water based, and Acuman is also a water-based propofol that helps to decrease the pain, but they are slow in onset and low potency in comparison to your conventionally used propofols. Please remember that always. Propofol is a very good sedative, hypnotic. It leads to enterograde amnesias, but it has no analgesic action. Propofol has no analgesic action. Always remember this. There is no analgesia that is provided by propofol. Now, what is the mechanism of action of propofol? Propofol acts on GABA A receptors. The GABA A receptors which are present in the brain, and after which the chloride channels open and you have conductance increase of the chloride channels leading to hyperpolarization and finally functional inhibition of your postsynaptic membrane. The onset, I've already told you, it is 1 arm circulation time, but the consciousness is regained also very fast. Within 6 to 7 minutes, the patient comes out of the effect of propofol. The reason behind this is the redistribution of propofol. Whenever a drug is given, suppose we inject a drug, what actually happens to that drug is through the veins, the drug is going to go to your heart, through the arteries, the drug is going to reach your brain. And there is a concentration gradient difference between the drug concentration in your blood and your brain. And thus, following that concentration gradient, your drug is going to go into the brain. And eventually, the concentration will come to an equilibrium, and when finally the concentration in the blood is going to decrease, and thus the drug will then again get redistributed. How the drug is going to get redistributed? The first organs that the drug is going to go will be your highly perfused organs. The drug is going to rush to those organs where they have luxurious perfusion, like your brain. Second step in redistribution would be the drugs are now going to go to your intermediate perfusion organs, the organs which are perfused intermediately, like your muscles. And lastly, the drug is going to go into the least perfused tissues, which are your adipose tissue. This is how a drug is redistributed in the 3-compartment model of your body. So the consciousness which is regained in all the IV induction agents is because of the redistribution. It is not because of the metabolism of the drug. Please remember, the rapid regain of consciousness in the induction agents is because of the redistribution and not because of the metabolism. The elimination half-life of propofol is 2 to 4 hours. That is, the clearance of propofol is very rapid. Where does it get metabolized? Every induction agent is going to get metabolized hepatically in your liver, and eventually it will get cleared by your kidney. All the 4 induction agents, metabolism will be in liver. The metabolism will be via liver enzymes, and clearance will be via kidney. The only exception is propofol. The propofol has 80% metabolism in liver and 20% is in the lungs. It has extra hepatic metabolism through lungs. It can get excreted also via lungs. That is the main thing why propofol is safe to be used in renal and liver failure. Please remember, propofol can be given in patients suffering from renal and liver failure. Done. Now, the very best part about propofol is that it has no active products. It has no active products, and thus, after rapid metabolism, it has no residual effects. There are very least residual effects post operatively, which have been seen by propofol. And that is the main reason that the post operative effects of propofol are negligible. This drug is very famous these days to be used in day care surgeries. So, in this very page, you have three very important MCQs. First, how does rapid metabolism take place? That is redistribution. Propofol can be used in renal liver failure and for daycare surgeries. It is the drug of choice because there is no active metabolites and there is no residual effect of propofol. And lastly, propofol leads to euphoria at the end. Okay, post-operatively, if you find the patients who have been treated or have been given propofol, they're very happy patients and they're euphoric, and thus this can lead to a bad consequence also. That is, propofol also has abuse potential because of that euphoria that propofol causes. Talking about the pharmacokinetics, it gets redistributed from highly perfused organs to less perfused organs after a single bolus. But because of the fact that propofol has such high metabolism and it gets cleared very fast, this is the reason why we also use infusions of propofol. This is the induction agent whose long-term use is done in the form of infusions in ICU because of its rapid metabolism. The contact sensitivity half time. Context sensitivity half time is the time, the half life of a drug which has been given in the form of infusion. Always remember this definition, please. When we talk about bolus, it is your half life. When we talk about your infusions, it is contact sensitivity half time of propofol is just 10 minutes even after 3 hours of continuous infusion of propofol. So it is preferred for infusions in ICU. The dose of propofol is 1 to 2.5 mg per kg. This is the dose of propofol. Generally, the lower doses are used in geriatric patients and the higher doses are used in pediatric patients because the pediatric patients' volume of distribution is very high and their basal metabolic rate is also equally high. When we talk about the infusion of propofol, the infusion of propofol is 50 to 100 mics per kg per minute. I repeat, the maintenance of propofol can be done via infusion because the contact sensitivity half time of propofol is very less. Pharmacodynamics. As propofol states, it's fall in everything. Talking about your central nervous system. Central nervous system, propofol is neuroprotective. It is neuroprotective. It is going to decrease everything. It is going to decrease your cerebral metabolic rate. It is going to decrease your cerebral blood flow, and eventually it is going to decrease your ICP. Propofol is an anticonvulsant. Exception is that in certain studies it has been seen that propofol gives some epileptogenic foci, but eventually it is used as an anticonvulsant because propofol is the drug of choice for patients suffering from status epilepticus. In patients of status epilepticus, the drug of choice is propofol. Propofol leads to burst suppression in EEG, but the beauty of propofol is it does not affect your somatosensory evoked potential. Propofol is not going to affect your somatosensory evoked potential. Now, what kind of case can come in this? A patient has been posted with lumbar spine fracture, right? And he has to undergo a spinal cord surgery. Or a patient is suffering from kyphoscoliosis and the patient is going to undergo that corrective surgery for the kyphoscoliosis. In such spinal cord patient, the spinal surgery patients, we do the spinal cord monitoring. And for that, you have to do the motor evoked potentials and somatosensory evoked potentials. Now, if a drug is going to suppress your somatosensory evoked potential, then how are you going to check the integrity of your spinal nerves during the operation or after the operation? So that is the main reason why propofol is the drug of choice for your spinal surgeries, even because it does not affect your SSEP. So this is the kind of case scenarios that you can encounter. The drug of choice for spinal surgeries. Moving forward, CVS. It's going to decrease everything. Your blood pressure, systemic vascular resistance, your venous return, your cardiac output. Everything is going to decrease. The thing that you all have to remember is this particularly. Propofol decreases the baroreceptor reflex, thus the vasodilation, the hypotension which has been caused by propofol is not actually compensated by the reflex tachycardia of the body because propofol blunts that baroreceptic reflex leading to bradycardia. Okay, that is an exception, a difference of propofol from thiopentone. Talking about the respiratory system, it is going to blunt all the airway reflexes, your laryngeal, pharyngeal reflexes. It's the blunting of the reflexes is so much or so good that if you want to insert a supraglottic airway device or an LMA, it can be done only under the influence of propofol, and you need not give a skeletal muscle relaxant to the patient because propofol itself is a very good agent to blunt your airway reflexes. Propofol is going to blunt your hypoxic and hypercapnic drive. It is an excellent bronchodilator. Propofol is a very good bronchodilator and thus recommended to be used in the patients of COPD and asthma. But the drug of choice of patients suffering from status asthmaticus remains ketamine. Propofol is a very good bronchodilator, but if one answer is asked, then it is ketamine. If option is given that both are correct, then yes, propofol and ketamine both can be given to the patients of COPD and asthma. Now, propofol can lead to apnea, respiratory depressions, and thus, whenever you give propofol, you have to be well prepared that you have to manage the airway there itself because the patient is going to lose the tone of your airway muscles, your tongue muscles, and eventually airway obstruction is going to take place. And lastly, the hypoxic pulmonary vasoconstriction that is maintained. Propofol maintains the hypoxic pulmonary vasoconstriction. It is going to decrease everything. CNS, CVS, respiratory system, it is going to blunt everything except your hypoxic pulmonary vasoconstriction. Hepatic and renal, not much effects. Ocular, it decreases your IOP and again the drug of choice for your ocular surgeries. Drug of choice for your ocular surgeries. It gives very good amnesia and It has certain antioxidant properties also, which has been seen in certain trials that it leads to free radical scavenging. I've already told you there's a rapid onset, rapid offset with euphoria. The uses of propofol. The very first, I told you it can be used as an infusion because it has very rapid contact sensitivity half time. So total intravenous anesthesia, propofol is the drug of choice along with opioids. Along with opioids, propofol is the drug of choice for DIVA. It can be used in neurosurgeries, thoracic surgeries, the drug of choice for daycare surgeries, the drug of choice for hepatic and renal failure, the drug of choice for acute intermittent porphyrias where thiopentone is contraindicated and malignant hypothermias. It can be given safely. It can be used in sedation in ICU or non-operating room anesthesia. The two very important uses of propofol is as an antiemetic, and this has been asked a number of times that how is this antiemetic action of propofol? It is due to its action on your chemoreceptor trigger zone or the area prostrema. In this, it acts anti-dopaminergic and anti-serotonins. So this is the pathway of its anti-emesis. The dose for antiemetic is 10 to 15 milligrams followed by infusion of 10 mics per kg per minute. And the one more important use of propofol is the antipruritic. It is antipruritic. In two main cases it is used. One is biliary cholestasis in patients who are suffering from biliary cholestasis, and second is in the patients who have received neuraxial opioids. It is highly useful to prevent your itching or pruritus in patients who have biliary cholestasis or in patients who have been given neuraxial opioids. The side effects. The first I've already told, that is the pain on injection. Now, the most important side effect asked multiple of times is propofol infusion syndrome. What actually propofol infusion syndrome is? It will be only there if the propofol has been given continuously for 48 hours or the total dose which have been administered to the patient is more than 4 milligrams per kg per hour. At this very dose or that very duration, we have the mitochondrial enzymes stop functioning properly. The free fatty acids which are present, they are not getting oxidated, they are not functioning, and eventually what gets disrupted, you all have to remember just two words. One, mitochondrial enzymes are being disrupted, and eventually what is happening is your electron transport chain, which is responsible for the production of ATP, that is getting disrupted. The signs and symptoms of propofol infusion syndrome are it will lead to metabolic acidosis along with hyperlipidemias, hepatomegaly, rhabdomyolysis, cardiomyopathies, and pancreatitis. Now, this propofol infusion syndrome per se can be formed in the case scenario also, like XYZ patient had been given propofol for almost 48 hours and the blood findings are suggestive of pH is around 7. The potassium is around 6.2. The lipid levels have increased. The cholesterol level has increased. So what is the treatment of choice in such a patient? Right? you first have to see that the whole scenario builds up in the which diagnosis. The diagnosis that can be formed is the patient had been given propofol for a prolonged period of time. The patient's blood investigation shows that the patient is suffering from metabolic acidosis, hyperlipidemias, and rhabdomyolysis because potassium level has increased. The treatment of choice for propofol infusion syndrome is ECMO, hemodialysis, or eventually CPR for cardiac arrest. The propofol, when given to the patient, it leads to a green colored urine because of the presence of phenol. Because of the presence of phenol, there is green color urine. And I've already told you that propofol has an abusive potential. It can lead to hallucinations, some fantasies, but much lesser than ketamine. Propofol is known for its myoclonic activity also, which is very, very less. Okay, I'm telling you this exception only sometimes because the question comes that which of the induction agents can cause myoclonus, and the options are like propofol, etomidate, both or none. So in this, both can be the answer. Etomidase is known for its myoclonic activity, but propofol has a rare outcome of propofol is this myoclonic activity. Pregnancy, lactation, it can be given. Pediatric cases, again it can be given. And last is egg allergy. The question comes whether a patient suffering from egg allergy can be given propofol or not. The answer is yes, he can be given because generally a person is allergic to the white component of the egg. Okay, and what we add in propofol is the yolk, the yellow component of the egg. That is why it is told that propofol can be used in patients who have egg allergies. Now moving to the second induction agent, which is the thiopentone. See, when we talk about thiopentone, this is one of the oldest induction agents. Much before propofol came, thiopentone had been used. Thiopentone was given by Lundy and Waters. The contribution of thiopentone has been by Lundy and Waters. The importance of Lundy and Water is, do you remember one more condition or one more area where you have heard this name before in the previous sessions? Lundy and Water is also responsible for giving us the concept of balanced anesthesia. Lundy and Water are responsible for giving the concept of balanced anesthesia. See, when we talk about the barbiturates, they are produced using urea and melanonic acid. Barbiturates are produced by urea plus malonic acid. And eventually, the barbiturates that are formed are of two types. One is your thiobarbiturates and other is your oxybarbiturates. The thiobarbiturates name is sulfur. Sulfur is added to it, and oxybarbiturate have oxygen. Okay, and this is the difference. On the second carbon atom, it is the second carbon atom. Even this has been asked just once, but the second carbon atom, if sulfur is present, it is thio. If oxygen is present, it is oxy. Thiobarbiturate, the examples are your thiopentone, your thioamyl, and oxybarbiturates, the example is methohexetone. And the most important difference between the thiobarbiturates and the oxybarbiturates that you all have to remember is their convulsant properties. Thiobarbiturates are known for their anti-convulsant properties, whereas oxybarbiturates they are used for their pro-convulsant properties. Okay, that is the reason what is the main difference in the use of barbiturates come. Now the question that comes is, which is the drug of choice for electroconvulsive therapies? What is electroconvulsive therapy? You actually induce a seizure in the patient. Now, when you are inducing a seizure, of course, you need a drug that is proconvulsant. So, a drug of choice for ECT is methotrexate. The drug of choice for ECT is methotrexate. Now, coming back to thiopentone. See, thiopentone is a sodium salt. It is a yellow amorphous powder that has to be reconstituted. It is generally present in the concentration of 2.5%. It is yellow. Yes, it is yellow in color because of the presence of sulfur. This sulfur molecule is responsible for the yellow color. It is highly alkaline. The pH is more than 10.5. It is highly alkaline, because of which it is a very good bacteriostatic, because of this high alkaline pH that the thiopentone has. But because of this high alkaline pH, you have to be very careful that only normal saline or distilled water is used in order to reconstitute the thiopentone, and never ringer lactate. Your RL is never used to reconstitute your thiopentone. Now, thiopentone always is present in the form of a combination. That is, thiopentone has 6 parts of anhydrous sodium carbonate that has been added to it. It is also a very important thing and asked a multiple of times, that why anhydrous sodium carbonate has been added to thiopentone. It is basically to prevent the precipitation of the insoluble barbituric acid, which is present in the thiopentone on exposure to the normal CO2 that is present in the air. For that, anhydrous sodium carbonate is added to thiopentone. What is the mechanism of action of thiopentone? It acts on your, again, it is GABA mimetic, acting on the reticular activating system in the brainstem. But it has been seen through studies that people say that when they had thiopentone, it had a taste of onion, garlic, or pizza. Matlab onion, garlic, pizza, of course. The thing worth remembering about thiopentone is it is not giving you analgesia. Thiopentone again does not give analgesia. It does not give any muscle relaxation. No analgesia, but it can give anti-analgesic properties. Yes, thiopentone has anti-analgesic properties, that it can lower the threshold of pain in the body. So please remember, propofol does not give analgesia, but on contrast to this, thiopentone is anti-analgesic, which can lower the threshold of pain. Again, ultra short acting, rapid onset, but rapid awakening also. The reason remains the same: redistribution of the drugs to first highly perfused, followed by intermediate perfused, and eventually the lower perfused. The thing about propofol that is different from thiopentone is that thiopentone, when given, always being lipid soluble, it always goes and rests in the adipose tissue. So what happens to thiopentone is that it goes and rests in the adipose tissue. So the metabolism of thiopentone is always delayed. The clearance, the elimination half-life of thiopentone is very high. It is very large. And that is the reason why thiopentone is not given as an infusions in your ICUs, because The thiopentone's context sensitivity half-life is very high in comparison to propofol because it goes and sits in the adipose tissue, and from the adipose tissue slowly and slowly it is going to come out. Thiopentone is highly stable, unlike propofol, which had a propensity to get bacterial contamination in it. Thiopentone is quite stable. Once deconstituted, the liquid formulation is stable at the room temperature for around 1 to 2 weeks, and in refrigerator you can keep it for around 1 month also. This has to be remembered that at room temperature the formulated thiopentone can be kept for 2 weeks, in refrigerator for 4 weeks, and methohexatone can be kept for 6 weeks. Done. The induction doses 3 to 5 mg per kg adults, 5 to 6 mg per kg children. You have to decrease the dose in older age. The dose of thiopentone, out of everything, this has been asked a lot many times because of the property of thiopentone that it goes and sits in the adipose tissue. The dose of thiopentone is always given using lean body weight and not the total body weight. I repeat, the dose of thiopentone is always administered via lean body weight. I already told the metabolism is slow because that is the reason it is never given in the form of long infusions. Talking about the pharmacodynamics, the central nervous system. Thiopentone barbiturates, they are very good when we talk about in the terms of central nervous system. They are neuroprotective. Again, everything is decreased. Other than that, what special is there in thiopentone is the reverse steal phenomena or the Robin Hood phenomena. Thiopentone causes reverse steal phenomena or Robin Hood phenomena. What Robin Hood does is it takes the blood from the luxurious perforated areas to the ischemic areas of your brain, thus in order to avoid permanent neural damage in those areas. That is your Robin Hood phenomena, taking the blood from the riches and giving it to the poor people. But please remember, this all is focal. Only if focal ischemia is there, your thiopentone can work. If there is global cerebral ischemia, like your cardiac arrest, in those cases, if asked that after cardiac arrest, is thiopentone useful to decrease the ischemia? The answer is a big no. Okay, because thiopentone needs some electrical activity of the brain to work. So it has to be said that thiopentone is of no use for post cardiac arrest. Okay, if a patient had global cerebral ischemia, thiopentone is not going to work. It is a very good anticonvulsant, and it can lead to post-operative nausea, vomiting, unlike your propofol. Your propofol was antiemetic, but thiopentone is proemetic. It works on the very same receptors of CNS, but it leads to emesis, unlike propofol. Talking about methohexital. I've already told you the main difference between methohexatone and thiopentone is epileptogenic activity. Methohexatone has epileptogenic property unlike thiopentone. These two things you all have to remember. The best drug, if we say, if a drug has to be given for cerebral protection, Which drug can be used is thiopentone. But the best modality which can be used for cerebral protection is hypothermias. That is, after cardiac arrest, if the patient survives, then after the return of spontaneous circulation, hypothermia is induced in the patient. But if the patient is alive, it has some cerebral activities, electrical activities, then the drug for cerebral protection would be your thiopentone. I hope this concept is clear to you, because these things are asked, like for example in assertion reason questions, or in the questions like incorrect statements or the correct statements, etc. Talking about the ocular, it decreases your IOP, and it has one more very favorable property, that is the antithyroid property. Generally, in patients who are suffering from thyrotoxicosis, if they have to undergo surgeries, thiopentone is the drug of choice. In patients who have thyrotoxicosis, because it decreases the conversion of T4 to activated T3 in the peripheral blood. So thiopentone has antithyroid properties and thus drug of choice in thyrotoxicosis. CVS is this going to decrease everything, your venous return, mean arterial pressure, cardiac output, and thus similar to propofol, it is not used in shock patients. Done? Like propofol not to be used, decreasing everything, but it is not going to blunt your baroreceptor reflexes. It has vagolytic property leading to compensatory tachycardia, which is the difference from propofol. There also I made you remember that propofol causes bradycardia, baroreceptor reflexes are inhibited, but in thiopentone it is tachycardia because thiopentone is vagolytic. Thiopentone thus is not used in heart blocks or in cases of fixed cardiac output where tachycardia could be deleterious. Respiratory system, again it is going to blunt your hypoxic and hypercapnic drive, but the problem with thiopentone is, again, unlike your propofol, it is going to cause incomplete suppression of your laryngeal pharyngeal reflexes, thus contraindicated in bronchial asthma. Actually, these are the two types of questions, like contraindicated or drug of choice. Thiopentone is contraindicated in bronchial asthma because of incomplete suppression of the pharyngeal laryngeal reflexes, leading to laryngospasm and bronchospasm. It can lead to apnea. It can depress your mucociliary clearance, leading to the building up of secretions, which are also responsible for causing the laryngospasm in the patients. Renal and hepatic. When we talk about the hepatic, it is a hepatic enzyme inducer. I repeat, your barbiturates are enzyme inducers. This is the reason why it induces a enzyme known as ALA, aminolevulinic acid. This enzyme is responsible for the production of a lot of porphyrins, and thus thiopentone is contraindicated in porphyrias that are acute intermittent porphyria and variegate porphyrias. Very important, many a times asked. The induction agent in which is contraindicated in porphyrias is thiopentone. But let's move one edge or one step ahead. Contraindicated in porphyrias, example, acute intermittent porphyria, variegate porphyria. But there is one porphyria in which this can be used, and that is your PCT, that is porphyria cutanea tarda. This is the porphyria in which the barbiturate, can be used. Your renal blood flow is reduced because your MAP is eventually reduced. I hope till now everything is clear to everyone. Uses as an induction agent. I've already told methotrexate is the drug of choice for electroconvulsive therapy. Now, thiopentone is the drug of choice for narcoanalysis, or it is used as truth serum. Just imagine giving thiopentone can lead you not to speak the lies. It's a truth serum used in narcoanalysis. Methotrexate is the barbiturate group which can be given rectally to the pediatric age group for pre-medications. Via rectal pathway, methotrexate is one of the induction agents which can be given as pre-medications also. And lastly, we have barbiturate coma, which is given in patients of increased ICP, that is intracranial pressure. Now, one thing about barbiturate that is asked a lot is, barbiturates are responsible for one complication, that for example, by chance your IV cannula has gone into your artery and you have given thiopentone. Now, the intra-arterial injection of thiopentone is going to lead to the precipitations of the crystals, because a highly alkaline solution gets mixed up with an acidic solution, leading to crystallization and precipitation, and eventually to vasospasms and thrombosis. So the first symptom that comes is pain, excruciating pain, and the first sign that comes is pallor, followed by ischemia, finally and eventually leading to gangrene of the limb. And it generally happens if your cannula has been put into antecubital fossa, and by mistake, instead of the vein, it goes into your brachial artery. Now, what is the treatment for this? Management. Leave the cannula there itself. Mark it in your minds. You have to leave the cannula there and you have to dilute it with normal saline. Other than that, 500 units of heparin can be used. You can use lignocaine, and lastly, papaverine can be used, or phentolamine papaverine can be used to avoid that vasospasm. If nothing works, then stellate ganglion block can be given. If nothing works, then stellate ganglion block, or lastly brachial plexus block can be given to the patient. Talking a little about stellate ganglion block, because this is one of the kinds of block which is asked in MCQ, but I don't know where we would come across it. But so it is very good, right? If you're talking about stellate ganglion block, just let's quickly revise the stellate ganglion block along with it. See, stellate ganglion block is a sympathetic block which is given at level of Schegna's tubercle, that is the tubercle of C7 vertebra. And how will you be sure that the complication which has been caused by thiopentone, for that the block that you have given has been successful or not successful? First sign, flushing would be there. Horner syndrome, your meiosis, ptosis, anhidrosis, and loss of ciliospinal reflexes seen. Conjunctival congestion, ipsilateral nasal stuffiness is there, because sympathetic block leads to the block of your face and your upper limb. The ipsilateral nasal stuffiness is also known by the name of Gut-Mann's sign. An ipsilateral tympanic membrane congestion can be seen, which is known as the Muller's sign. Now moving first to etomidate now. After etomidate, the last very drug would be your ketamine. See, etomidate belongs to the class of amidazoles. These are amidazoles which are lipid soluble at your physiological pH. Even etomidate can be clear, but it can also be milky white in color. Etomidate is highly painful on injections because of the presence of propylene glycol in it, which can lead to veno-irritation and thus very painful when injected. Etomidate also has no analgesic properties. Like your propofol and your thiopentone, no analgesic property is present in etomidate. The etomidate again works on the GABA receptors. Onset is 15 to 20 seconds. Duration again that 5 minutes because of the redistribution. The dose of etomidate is 0.2 to zero point 0.4 mg per kg IV. The pharmacokinetics, redistribution metabolized by liver and your plasma esterases. Pharmacodynamics. The beauty of etomidate is that it has no effects on your cardiovascular system. Minimal effects on cardiovascular system and no histamine release, and thus the drug of choice in cardiac surgeries is etomidate. Talking about CNS, the cerebral perfusion pressure is maintained, but it is known for its epileptogenic properties and myoclonus properties. It is known for its epileptogenic and myoclonus properties and not used in neurosurgery cases. When we talk about neurosurgery, the two drugs which are mostly used are your thiopentone and your propofol. Etomidate are not preferred. Respiratory system, it will lead to blunting like propofol and thiopentone. It is a good bronchodilator. Okay, propofol, good bronchodilator. Thiopentone, no. Etomidate, a good bronchodilator. Hepatic and renal effects are very less. Uses in the patients who are cardiorespiratory compromised, cardiac OTs, constrictive pericarditis, cardiac tamponade, or of course in those patients who are unstable, who are shock patients. In those cases etomidate can be used. Etomidate being a epileptogenic, it has an epileptogenic property, so it can be used also like methotrexate in electroconvulsive therapies. Talking about the side effects of etomidate, the most common side effect which is asked is adrenal cortical suppression. Etomidate causes adrenal cortical suppression because it leads to decrease in the cortisol production by acting on an enzyme which is 11 beta hydroxylase enzyme. 11 beta hydroxylase, sorry for the spelling mistake. 11 beta hydroxylase enzyme is inhibited and thus the level of cortisol in the body decreases. So it is also used, one of the uses of etomidate is in hypercortisolemias. This is one of the uses of etomidate. It causes pain on injection. This induction agent causes the maximum PONV, postoperative nausea, vomiting, which causes the maximum is etomidate, and least is propofol. Myoclonus activity is present. It inhibits platelet functions. It can lead to your hiccups, and epileptogenic spikes are quite common. But as advancement goes, just remember that newer etomidate congeners have come up which lead to less nausea vomiting also and lesser reduction in cortisol synthesis also. Actually, cortisol synthesis becomes very important in those cases which have a lot of inflammation in the body, and we need a stress response of the patient's body to come and give certain anti-inflammatories which are in the form of your cortisol. So in such a patient, if cortisol is not present, that could be deleterious for the patients. So in such cases, you have to avoid giving etomidate, in which cortical suppression could be bad for the patients. So the two new types of etomidates, like propofol that I had talked about, we have two different newer types of etomidates also, that is carboetomidate and CPMM, cyclopropyl methoxycarbonyl etomidate. Just remember, we have newer etomidates also, carboetomidate. Both have a carbonyl or carbo atom in it, so you can remember these are newer types of etomidates. Now finally coming to ketamine. Can you see that complete which is written? No, the session is not getting completed soon. The complete is that ketamine in itself is known as a complete induction agent, because this is causing a very good analgesic to the patient. It is a very good analgesic for the patient, that is ketamine. It leads to sedation, amnesia as well as analgesia. Ketamine is a phenylcyclidine derivative. Imidazole, imidazoline derivative is etomidate. Alkyl phenols are your propofol. Phencyclidines are your ketamine. It is water soluble, and the most important thing about ketamine is the routes of administration. It can be administered in multiple routes like intranasally, orally, rectally, intravenous, IM. So these all routes of ketamine are present except one, that is subcutaneous route. Ketamine is not given by a subcutaneous route. Mechanism of action is NMDA receptors. Rest three are through GABA. This is through NMDA receptors. It does not only decrease the activity of NMDA receptors but also of opioid receptors, your voltage sensitive sodium L type calcium receptors. Why is it important for all of you to know? First, the question comes, out of the following which are not GABA mimetic? Option is ketamine. Ketamine is NMDA receptor blockers. Second, ketamine has a role in opioid tolerance. In patients who have opioid tolerance and opioid is not causing analgesia in those patients, ketamine can help because this also is acting on your opioid receptors. Last, the only induction agent which has a local anesthesia property also in it. That is because it acts on your sodium channels. Okay, so ketamine can be used multiply. It causes activity through NMDA receptors. It can be used in those patients who had been tolerant to opioids. They have abusive potentials, and thus analgesia is provided using ketamine. And lastly, ketamine is the induction agent that also acts like your local anesthetic because it can block your voltage gated sodium channels. A star marked question, like a star buck question, is that which other anesthetic agent unlike your LAs can block your sodium channels? The answer is xenon. Like ketamine, xenon, which is an inert gas, is also used to block these channels. Dose 1 to 2 mg per kg if given IV, and double this is given for IM. This is generally the induction dose of ketamine. Ketamine is also used in sub-anesthetic doses, that are the half doses. The sub-anesthetic doses for sedation purpose. That is mainly for sedation purpose. Onset again is faster, duration is also less, it is lipid soluble, and it is a sympathetic stimulatory. It leads to central sympathetic stimulation. How? It decreases the reuptake of your catecholamines, your norepinephrine. It decreases the metabolism as well as it decreases the reuptake of your catecholamines, and thus now every effect of ketamine is going to, because it is a sympathetic stimulator. Pharmacokinetics, the importance of ketamine is it gives a active metabolite which is the norketamine, which is potential. It also acts in the same way like ketamine, and thus the effect of ketamine can be prolonged because of the presence of active metabolite which is the norketamine. Talking about the pharmacodynamics, I've already told you it is sympathetic stimulator. CNS, vasodilator, it increases everything. It is going to increase your cerebral metabolic rate of oxygen. It is going to increase your cerebral blood flow. It is going to increase your cerebral perfusion pressure also, but eventually it is also going to increase your ICP. In CVS also, it also acts like sympathetic stimulant. But before coming to CVS, one thing about CNS is this line. Please everyone understand one thing. Contraindicated in neurosurgeries is absolutely wrong. I know ketamine is sympathetomimetic, it is going to increase everything, but still ketamine is an anticonvulsant. It leads to sedation hypnosis and it can be given in neurosurgical patients also if need be. Choice is always your propofol and thiopentone. But for example, the patient comes in shock. This case that has been given to you, the same case, if I repeat the very first case that I gave you about the 21-year-old boy, if suppose that patient was specifically mentioned that the patient is in shock, then you cannot give propofol, it is going to decrease everything. You cannot give thiopentone, it is contraindicated in shock patients. So in those patients, ketamine is the drug of choice if there is hemodynamic instability. Okay, so for CNS, it increases everything, but still it has anticonvulsant property and not contraindicated in neurosurgeries. Talking about the cardiovascular system, the cardiovascular system is dependent upon the catecholamines effect, the catecholamine levels in the body. Directly, if we say it is myocardial depressant, okay, it is myocardial depressant. Indirectly, because it decreases the reuptake of norepinephrine, it is myocardial stimulant. Now, what happens, for example, in a patient of severe sepsis? Around last stages of sepsis is there. In those cases, the endogenous catecholamines have decreased. Okay, and when endogenous catecholamines are not present, then whose reuptake or whose metabolism is ketamine going to hamper? So eventually, in those cases, it is going to act like a myocardial depressant. In cases where catecholamine levels are decreased, it is myocardial depressant, and in cases in which catecholamine levels are maintained, it is myocardial stimulant, leading to hypertension, increase in cardiac output, and increase in your heart rate. And that is why it is contraindicated in patients of ischemic heart disease. Obviously, it is sympathomimetic in normal patients. In normal patients, by say, I want to say, whose catecholamine levels are normal. It cannot be given in uncontrolled hypertensive patients or the patients who have the predisposition of aortic aneurysm ruptures. In those patients, ketamine is contraindicated. It is indicated in two main cases. One, acute shock. Please read the case very carefully. Okay, whether the case scenario is acute or chronic, if it is acute shock, ketamine can be given because catecholamines levels are maintained in the body in acute shock. It is the drug of choice for cyanotic heart diseases. In cyanotic heart diseases like TOF, it is a drug of choice because it increases your systemic vascular resistance, right? And thus it decreases the right to left shunt. None of your other induction agents was leading to increase in your systemic vascular resistance, and thus none can be used for cyanotic congenital heart diseases. It is ketamine which has to be used in those cases because the right to left shunt is decreased because your output from the left ventricle, that is the systemic vascular resistance, is increased. I hope there are a lot of questions in this very page. First, how it acts on the cardiovascular system, what are the indications, the contraindications, and the formation of your norketamine. Respiratory system. Again, it's an exception. It maintains your ventilatory drive to hypercapnia. The upper airway reflexes, the tone are maintained. That is why ketamine is the drug of choice when we come to full stomach patients. In full stomach patients, ketamine becomes the drug of choice because the upper airway tone and reflexes are maintained. It maintains the ventilatory drive to hypercapnia. Talking about the bronchodilation, I've already sensitized you that this is the best bronchodilator. When we talk about the status asthmaticus patients, the first choice will be always ketamine in those patients. But the only problem with ketamine is that it increases the salivary and tracheobronchial secretions. And because of this increase in secretions, the secretions can get retained and can lead to spasms. That is why whenever ketamine is being used, before that anticholinergics are given to the patients. Always remember, along with ketamine, the question is which other drug has to be given. It is your anticholinergist to decrease this secretions. Hepatic renal, no major effect. GIT, it increases gastric tones. Ocular, it increases your intraocular pressure, contraindicated in glaucoma. It is contraindicated in glaucoma. Pain on injection, no pain. It itself is a very good analgesic agent. Uses: shock, cardiac tamponades, restrictive pericarditis, asthma patients, cyanotic heart diseases. It is a very good analgesic. Now imagine it has very good analgesia and it maintains your reflexes and your upper airway tone. So this drug is used in warfares, in peripheries, in patients who are meant for burn dressings, patients of cancer, of complex regional pain syndromes. In those patients, ketamine is used as an analgesic agent. Rapid sequence intubation, I've already told that it prevents the aspiration in full stomach. NORA, non-operating room anesthesia, because it maintains your upper airway reflexes, thus the chances of respiratory obstruction are very less. It is used in patients of depression as an antidepressants. It can be safely used for malignant hypothermias, for TIVAs in patients who have opioid tolerance, and like methotrexate, I had told, can be used for premedication because it can be given per rectally. Ketamine has an IM route for the children in order to decrease that separation anxiety in the patients. And lastly, it is the drug of choice for patients of PPH because it increases to the tonicity of the uterus. It is used in patients of PPH. Of course, one reason is that the blood is being lost, so the hemodynamic profile will be very bad. For such a patient, ketamine and patient in shock, ketamine could be very useful. Second is that it increases the tonicity of the uterus. Coming to side effects. The most important side effect of ketamine is dissociative anesthesia. It dissociates. What does it dissociate and from whom? It dissociates your thalamus. It is going to inhibit the thalamus and it is going to stimulate your limbic system. This the pathway is fully disrupted, because of which you have a cataleptic state. Cataleptic state is that the patient's eye will be open, but the patient is not going to respond to your pain. That is the cataleptic state. It is a state in which the patient has very good level of analgesia, but the patient is restless. The patient of cataleptic state is not going to respond thoroughly, or he is not going to answer your questions. This is a complication which is most common with ketamine. Then ketamine can lead to emergence deliriums, that is, you have some vivid perceptions. We have various predisposing factors for that also, like for example, female genders, age more than 15 years, or any patient who is schizophrenic. So, ketamine is contraindicated in those patients who have certain psychiatric disorders like schizophrenias. Side effects: dissociative anesthesia, your emergence delirium. One thing that is different from propofol is, I already told you that propofol, whenever the patient wakes up, if the patient when wakes up, he has very good euphoria. The patient is happy, which is not there in ketamine. In ketamine, the patient when wakes up, he is in a cataleptic state. Then it can lead to cortical blindness because of the depression of inferior colliculus and medial geniculate nucleus. The treatment of ketamine's dissociative anesthesia is your benzodiazepines. This is the treatment of choice for dissociative anesthesia, that is your benzodiazepines. Again, ketamine has abuse potentials. Now coming very fast to the benzodiazepines. See, when we talk of benzodiazepines, they are not very good induction agents and they are least preferred induction agents. The most common action or use of benzodiazepine is in sedation. They are very good sedatives, hypnotics, and amnesia action is very nice. The exception of benzodiazepine that you all have to remember is these are the only drugs which lead to retrograde amnesia. Like all the previous studied drugs lead to anterograde amnesia, benzodiazepines lead to retrograde amnesia. Benzodiazepines in the form of midazolam, which is the most commonly used benzodiazepine, and short-acting benzodiazepine can be used for long durations in ICU sedation. Basically, benzodiazepine, I've already told it, anti-anxiety, sedative, anticonvulsant, and one star marked question is it can lead to muscle relaxation, but that is spinal cord mediated. This is the special thing about benzodiazepines, leading to muscle relaxation via spinal cord. Mechanism of action is GABA A receptors. And benzodiazepine has one antidote also, which is known as flumazenil. This is the antidote for benzodiazepines. When we talk about benzodiazepines, we have three main benzodiazepines. One is your midazolam, that is short acting. Then intermediate acting, this is your lorazepam, and long acting, that's your diazepam. Okay, you have midazolam, lorazepam, and diazepam. When we talk about the pain, lorazepam and diazepam lead to pain when injected because they are lipid in nature. These are your short acting, intermediate acting, and long acting drugs. Midazolam is fastest, shortest among the benzodiazepine, water soluble, whereas lorazepam and diazepam are lipid soluble, leading to pain on injection. The elimination life is around 1 to 4 hours. Hepatic metabolism is seen in midazolam. When we talk about the potency of the benzodiazepines, the most potent is lorazepam, followed by midazolam, followed by diazepam. That is the potency of your benzodiazepines. Dynamics, again, CNS, it is going to decrease the cerebral metabolic oxygen requirement, but it is not neuroprotective. Means you cannot say that benzodiazepines can be used for inducing a patient of neurosurgery. Benzodiazepines can be used for inducing. For example, if the dose of pre-medication of midazolam is just 0.05 mg per kg, but the induction dose of midazolam is around 8 mg per kg. Serious, it is again decreasing the blood pressure and it is vagolytic. Respiratory system, same, blunting the reflexes and depresses your respiratory center. Uses, the most common use of midazolam is your pre-medication. It is also being given as oral pre-medication. Sedation during the regional anesthesia. Induction, yes, it can be used sometimes. Midazolam, no pain. Lorazepam, diazepam can cause pain because they are fat. They are lipid soluble. And midazolam has one more extra property like your propofol. It decreases the incidence of PONV. But if one drug is asked, that is your propofol. Diazepam, lorazepam, midazolam I've already told. It can use for ICU sedation. Now, one of the questions, let's revise which all drugs can cause pain on injection. Propofol, we all know about it. Etomidate, yes. Diazepam and methotrexate. These are the four drugs that lead to pain on injection. I repeat again. Propofol, etomidate, methotrexate and diazepam. And one neuromuscular blocker is also there. That is your rocuronium. Rocuronium leads to pain on injection. One of the benzodiazepine, I just want you all know the name of it. It is the newly introduced benzodiazepine, that is remimazolam. Remimazolam is ultra short acting. Okay, and the ultra short acting nature of this drug is because it gets metabolized by plasma esterases, which are non-specific, and not hepatic metabolism takes place. That is why it is very, very rapid and ultra short acting. Coming last to dexmedetomidine, not actually used as an induction agent, but used in the form of pre-medication to enhance the effect of your induction agents. It's a centrally acting alpha 2 adrenoreceptor agonist like clonidine, but its effect on alpha 2 receptor is very high in comparison to clonidine. It is used as an adjunct, very good sedation, analgesic, but sympathetolytic. The complication that dexmedetomidine causes is your hypotension, and it is known to cause your bradycardias. These are two complications of dexmedetomidine. Minimal effect on respiratory and cardiovascular depression is very minimal. Dexmedetomidine is the drug of choice for your conscious sedation or NORA because it has minimal effects on respiratory, cardiovascular, and CNS. That is why it is the drug of choice in patients of conscious sedation. That is the monitored anesthesia care. Conscious sedation. Which drugs can cause conscious sedations? Benzodiazepines, propofol, dexmedetomidine. I already told you propofol is known to be used for daycare surgeries because of its very fast metabolism from the body. So I've already told you a list of drugs which can lead to pain during injection, then a list of drugs which can be used for conscious sedation. Last is droperidol. I know the last is not coming. Last is droperidol, which is a butyrophenone derivative. Again, it is a sedative, but the beauty is the anti-emesis acting on the GABA receptors used specifically in those surgeries which are very prone for post-operative nausea, vomiting. It can lead to decrease in the pruritus of which has been because of the opioids. It is antipruritic in nature. The opioids causing the itching in the body, it can decrease it. It can lead to sedation. The term that is connected with droperidol is your neuroleptic analgesia and anesthesia, which I'm sure you must have studied in your pharmacology. Neuroleptic analgesia is it acts like a tranquilizer. We join fentanyl with this and this leads to neuroleptic analgesia. The brand name is Inovar. Neuroleptic anesthesia, we join the droperidol fentanyl with nitrous oxide. That is your neuroleptic anesthesia. Neuroleptic is droperidol. The side effect of droperidol is it leads to torsades de pointis or to the QTC prolongation. That is the main side effect of droperidol. TIVA, all these induction agents can be used in combination for total intravenous anesthesia. Many people use a combination of ketamine with propofol. People use a combination of propofol with fentanyl, propofol with remifentanil, and there are various other combinations that the people have made to be used for TIVA and not to use your inhalational agents. TIVA is good because your inhalational agents they hamper your cerebral metabolic rate of oxygen. That is, they increase everything. They increase your cerebral blood flow, they increase your ICP, and thus not preferred much in the neurosurgeries. So what is the preferred one is your induction agents, even for maintenance. Your induction agents, when used in combination, can lead to maintenance of your HPV, the blood supply is maintained, the post-operative nausea vomiting is less. Such combinations can be used in the patients of malignant hyperthermias, or they all lead to a very quick recovery in the patients. But the problem is, yes, you need special infusion pumps to deliver a target controlled infusions to the patients such that their plasma concentrations are maintained. And lastly, because such sophistication is needed for giving TIVA, some part of awareness is present because of the non-maintenance of the plasma concentration of your induction agents. Again, coming to the MCQ type of questions, when to be used in ECT, the most preferred is methotrexate, followed by etomidate, ketamine, thiopentone, and propofol. Of course, these two are not to be used because they are anticonvulsants. Ketamine, it is also an anticonvulsant, but these two are proconvulsant, and out of which methotrexate is the drug of choice for ECT. The drugs which lead to histamine release. So whatever drugs we have studied, the drugs which can lead to histamine releases, all drugs except etomidate, because it has minimal effects on cardiovascular system, because it leads to a very mild or no histamine release in the body, unlike your propofol, ketamine, and thiopentone. Cerebroprotective agents. I'm repeating again, all four are cerebroprotective agents. Now, out of this, I don't know, but one question has been asked. This is a little higher, but the only question that was asked was about propofol, that how propofol is given. So I'll be emphasizing only on propofol here. The rest, if interested, you can always visit Obesity with Anesthesia, or you can read this. Propofol loading dose that we give is by total body weight, but maintenance is given via lean body weight. The total body weight is used to give loading dose, and lean body weight is used to give the maintenance dose of propofol. Now, some case scenarios. I've already told you a case can be given to you, but eventually you have to take that one word out of which, and then the question becomes quite straightforward and one-liner. Like daycare surgery. They can give you any daycare surgery like fibroadenomas or inguinal hernias and ask you that if this patient is undergoing the surgery, then what agent of choice will be given? Propofol. Same traumatic brain injury that I just told you. Emergency laparotomy. A patient had a complaint of abdominal pain and has been posted for emergency laparotomy. The patient is in shock, the vitals are not maintained. What is the drug of choice in such a patient? If in acute case, then of course ketamine is the drug of choice. If such a case comes like a chronic case, then ketamine is not preferred. You can prefer etomidate in such patients. But please remember, etomidate have its own risk because it leads to adrenal suppression. So, in order to overcome that part of etomidate, sometimes hydrocortisone or steroids are given if etomidate is being used for patients. Propofol infusion syndrome, I've already talked about it. Thank you. Not actually. Let's revise it very quickly. Status asthmaticus, ketamine. What determines the speed of recovery? Redistribution. Acute adrenal insufficiency, etomidate. PONV decrease, propofol. Which agent should not be given in bronchospasm? Thiopentone. All IV agents act on GABA except ketamine. IV agent only which has analgesic effect, that is your ketamine. Psychomimetic action post-operatively, ketamine. Reversal agent. Out of these drugs, I just want to ask, if asked, if reversal agent like neostigmine has to be given if induction agent are given, the answer is no. No reversal agents are used. Antidotes are present. In case a patient has benzodiazepine poisoning, then of course you can use your flumazenil, but until other than that, there is no use of any reversal agent for your induction agents. Can be given in hepatic renal failure, propofol. Immunogenically safe. This was the term that was actually used in your previous year question. That was immunogenically safe. That is your etomidate. That means that no histamine will be released. Best analgesia, ketamine. Induction agent I am talking about. The best analgesic induction agent is ketamine. Extrahepatic metabolism, propofol. Status epilepticus, propofol is the drug of choice. Interaction with psychiatric medications, ketamine. Cocaine-like effect, again ketamine because it works on innumerable receptors. And eventually your local anesthetic is ketamine again. And that calls for a thank you.